Hey guys, it's Ryan with Motorcycle.com here in not so natural habitat for me. I'm not, don't have any tires in the dirt, thankfully today, and I'm not in the shower. Figured we'd do this one here at the racetrack for you. So we're out in southern Spain at the Andalusia track north of Almeria, and getting a chance to rip on Ducati's 2025 Streetfighter V4S. I can tell you the day was incredible. I'm a big fan of naked bikes. I've owned many of them. It's something that we've kind of gotten away from with me riding so much off-road stuff, but I'm super happy to be back on the track. And honestly, I was a little scared going into this press intro because this is a 1100cc V4 Ducati, which is basically now even more so a Panigale with, you know, a handlebar. So I was a little apprehensive, but let's get into it. The story of the Streetfighter V4 is one of continual advancement of performance, not only through power, but more importantly through a chassis, with a host of rider aids to help those riding at the limit keep things reined in. So let's go over kind of what we're looking at here. Again, this is now more so a Panigale than it ever has been. Other bikes, really around the whole market, they've been kind of watered down sport bikes when we've got these new naked bikes, this new crop of naked bikes for the last decade or so. But what Ducati has done is really ramp that back to what the old school naked bike was. It's really a sport bike with handlebars. This Streetfighter V4S gets all of the updates that the Panigale got at the end of the year last year. So you're gonna have a completely new chassis. Everything is kind of bolted to the engine, and obviously the double-sided swing arm, whether you feel good about it or not, that's the way things go. And what Ducati's done with this is really reduce the lateral stiffness on both ends. So when you're really leaned over into a corner and you can't rely on your suspension to do anything because it doesn't work when it's leaned over, now you have the flex built into this, and it's crazy amounts of flex. You know, it's like 40% more lateral flex than it was in the past. And what that's gonna do is make things more predictable, easier to ride when the thing's totally leaned over, and honestly, easier to ride when you're here at the racetrack. For the S model, you get the Öhlins EC3 electronic suspension, which is going to have semi-active functions. You can lock things out, do things a little bit more manually so things are locked into the settings that you want, or you can have it continuously monitoring your ride. The electronics package is going to be the same. You have the new DVO system, the Ducati Vehicle Observation. It's basically taking all of these crazy ride modes and things, everything that they've learned from now years of dominating the upper echelons of motorcycle racing, kind of instilled into this. They say it's basically like having 70 sensors on the bike, but it's basically taking all of the copious amounts of data that they've got from racing, distilling it down into an algorithm and putting this into this bike so it can work predictively and kind of defensively against, you know, what you're doing to make sure that you're getting the best experience that you can out of this bike. So again, going back to kind of make this relative, put it in perspective for you guys, I love doing track days, but that said, in the past few years even, I've been doing less and less, maybe one a year. It's probably been a couple years since I've done a track day. And so coming into this, like I said, I was a little apprehensive. This is a crazy, you know, gnarly performance motorcycle. And our first session out, you know, we did a little lead and follow to make sure everyone kind of had some semblance of an idea of where you're going on this racetrack, which has a lot of kind of blind corners and things like this, some elevation changes. It's a really, really cool track. You know, that was great to get an idea where we're going. Ducati put some cones up too to help out everybody that maybe hadn't been here before, like myself. And after that first session, you know, a little lead and follow, but really after spending a few more laps after that, I was ready to have a great day on this bike because it was so easy to ride. We started off in sport mode, so kept things kind of medium power. I would say kind of soft for a sport mode. That said, once you get the thing past 12,000 RPM, it's got the variable length intake. Once you get past 12,000 RPM, this thing just wants to rip your arms off in the best way. And thankfully, the Brembo Hyper brake calipers are absolutely phenomenal. I was really enjoying, you know, blasting down the back straight at over 150 miles an hour and then bearing the brakes. The chassis just keeps everything completely composed. And again, talking about a rider of my experience level, the takeaway from our first few sessions was just how easy this motorcycle is to ride around a racetrack. And as the day, you know, went on, of course, you know, you get a little more confidence, jump into race mode, gives you the bump into the next level of power. And that was just, everything starts coming at you so much faster. When you're in race mode, as my confidence came up and I knew I could trust the bike, race mode was the way to go. And it just start slingshotting you between apexes so much faster. But again, the high pure brakes, the caliper, incredible, master cylinder, everything, all Brembo stuff, and it works really well. I would say the only thing that I kind of noticed for myself was the quick shifter kind of was making pretty long cuts. So there were times where the bike kind of jerked a little bit. I would say I was never on the limit by any means. It's not something that I thought was going to unsettle the chassis and cause me an issue, but it was just not quite as quick as I expected it to be. I even tried to be very, very quick and deliberate, and it was still kind of cutting too long. So that was honestly kind of surprising because it's not something I've dealt with the previous gen Street Fighter. But yeah, and then obviously dialing it up to race mode, you get the stiffer suspension. You got the Olin steering damper on here as well, and it just kind of stiffens everything up, and you can just push that much harder, which you need because you're also getting fed the power that much quicker. So really the last Street Fighter was based off of the 2018 Panigale. That Street Fighter was an incredible machine, we really enjoyed it, but with this Street Fighter being based off of the 2025 Panigale, you've basically jumped that 7 years in development and advancement of what the Panigale is now brought to Ducati, and which is now infused into this bike. It's incredible. I love naked bikes. I'd rather honestly ride a naked bike, especially around somewhere like here at the racetrack. It's only, again, on the back straight where you're tapping the top of 5th gear that things get pretty hectic when you're trying to hold on to it while the wind's trying to rip you off the bike. So we'll throw up some graphics here so you can kind of get an understanding of what happens with the power modes and the suspension and everything, so you have a better idea than me explaining probably 50 different settings and ways you can change things. But with Ducati, and like we've seen across the entire Ducati line, you can make adjustments to any ride mode, suspension modes, all of these things, and those are going to be saved. So it's the best system in my opinion. Ducati allows you to make those adjustments. Again, you could turn rain mode into sport mode into rain mode. Doesn't make any sense to do it, but you can do it. And I feel like that's the way, if you're going to have an insane host of electronics like you do with the Street Fighter V4S, that's the way you should be able to do it as an owner. That's certainly the way you should be able to do it if you paid $23,400 for the base model, and even more so for the S at $29,300. It's not a cheap motorcycle. Ducati kind of came out punching with this new V4S. The engine is a little neutered coming into the US. It's rated for the European version, it's rated at 216 horsepower. Insane. I think the Acra slip-on accessory bumps it to like 226 or something. Absolutely bonkers. But in the US, we get a paltry 205 horsepower. Ugh, right? Such a bummer. You are still gonna get 88 pound-feet of torque. There's maybe like a tenth of a change between the European spec and the US spec, but that horsepower number is also coming in about 900 RPM lower than the European version, getting its 214 horsepower at 13.5. There's a ton of technology to talk about with this motorcycle. A lot of it has been covered with the 2025 Panigale V4 review, but if you want in detail, you want to look at the ride mode matrix, all of these things, spec sheet, all of that, please go over to Motorcycle.com. I am absolutely knackered, as they say, after a solid track day. I had so much fun on this bike. It was so much easier to ride than I had expected. My face, it went from apprehension to a giant grin on my face within the first 3 laps around the track, and it didn't come off my face all day. So I had an awesome time on this. It's going to be a super accessible bike, and it doesn't matter if you're intermediate, experienced, whatever, you can tailor this thing to however you want. If you want the detailed breakdown, specs, some thoughts after I can, like take a shower, I won't film it this time, I promise, but it'll be over at Motorcycle.com. We'll have the full write-up, everything you need over there. If you liked the video, like, comment, subscribe. If you didn't like the video, as we used to say, I'll try harder next time. Thanks, guys.